Alright y'all, welcome back to the channel and to some more turkey patterning, and today we've got a combo that one of you guys suggested that we try out a couple of months ago now actually, so I apologize it's taken me this long to get to it, but it's definitely a pretty interesting thought process that I wanted to try out and see what it can actually do. But as for those shells I brought out here today, I got out some of these, some of the Winchester Super X, Upland and small game shells. They are a 12 gauge, 2 3/4 inch, 1 1/8 ounce payload of lead 4s, moving about 1,255 feet per second. Now, no, these are not a turkey shell, but we've been testing some of these upland or field style shells through turkey chokes to see what they could actually do and to see if they're good enough to get a turkey with them out to 30, 35, 40 yards or so. And we have tested these once or twice before for turkeys, and from what I can remember, they were good enough, but definitely not the best field style shell for turkeys that we've tested either. So we'll see what these can do through today's choke combo. But as for today's setup, I brought out the Remington 1187, and for the choke, one of you guys wanted to see us run those through this one, which is the Primos Tight Wad 660 constriction turkey choke. These are very cheap. I think you can get these for like $20 to $25 or so, and sometimes you can even find them on sale for like $15. So they're very cheap chokes, but it has always done pretty well for us. So we'll see what we can get from the Tight Wad with these Winchester small game 4s, because it might work, it might not, but 660 has tended to be a pretty good constriction for a shell like this one, so we'll see what happens. But as for today's test, everything is set up the same as usual. I'm not handicapping this combo at all. So the turkey paper is set up at 40 yards, and we've got the chronograph so we can get our velocity. So let's get you guys a view of that target and see just how good these Winchester small game 4s can do through the Tight Wad 660, and if it's a good enough combination to reliably take out on a 40-yard turkey hunt. I don't know what we're gonna see, but let's go over here and take our shot and see what kind of pattern it gives us. Alright, so that shell gave us 1314 through the chrono. The boss claim is 1255, but we do have a 28-inch barrel, so I mean, they could have potentially tested these through a 24 or 26 maybe. Either way, 1314 is starting to move a little bit quick for a lead number 4 shell like that, but you're definitely going to be carrying quite a bit of energy down there with a lead 4 at that kind of velocity. So the energy is going to be there, but what kind of a pattern did they give us down there? And is it good enough for a turkey hunt or not? Let's go check it out and see what we got. Alright, so now we're down here at our 40-yard paper, and this is what we got. Now, yes, technically, we would have had a dead turkey here. There's one that just barely clipped the bottom edge of his brain right under his eye, and a couple more that would have gotten into the spine a little bit farther down his neck. So we would have had a dead turkey, and there's really nowhere on that paper that he can move his head to and get away from you. So is it a good enough pattern for 40 yards? Technically speaking, yes. Now, backing up and looking at the whole picture here, 40 yards is what I'm calling the absolute last ditch effort maximum range, because it's definitely a pretty broad pattern overall, which is not at all surprising considering these are a field load, an upland type of shell. They are really not designed to do what we tried to do with them today, but they are cheap and you can get a lot of them for a much lower cost than a turkey shell. So I guess the answer is yes, they are good enough through a Tight Wad 660 to be a 40-yard turkey shell. Would I do it ideally? Definitely not. If you had to use that combo, you would be plenty good enough at 30 yards and in all day long. Now for the rest of the pattern, we didn't really see any flyers. It's just a much more broad pattern, and with only 1 1/8 ounce of 4s, we don't have a ton of pellets to work with. So it is far from a tight condensed pattern, but it's an even spread of pellets across the paper. So that does give me hope that with the right choke, we can get these to tune in just a little bit better than this. Potentially, anyway. Now, are we kind of pulling at straws here a little bit? Yeah, maybe. But it's always interesting and kind of fun to test these not so turkey dedicated type of shells to see what they can actually do. So for a pattern today, it definitely did not do anything too surprising. It wasn't terrible considering what the shell is. Again, it's not a turkey shell, but it's far from a turkey pattern as well. At least it gave us an even spread spread of pellets that we might be able to find the right choke for and make these a somewhat viable 40-yard turkey shell for what they are. But for this combination today, technically it's good enough out to 40. I wouldn't push it a step past that personally, but if you're a 30-yard and in type of hunter that's on a budget, you can get a 25 round box of these shells for like 13 bucks, 14 bucks, and one of those tight wad chokes for another 20-ish, and you would have a perfectly usable enough 30-yard and in turkey pattern. So I think the overall result was about what we expected it to be. Not terrible for what it is, but clearly not a dedicated turkey shell combination at the same time. And here's the wad from that shell. It's your very standard field type of wad. Definitely nothing fancy about it, but it looks pretty good overall. We do have maybe a couple little tiny pinholes on the edges here, but nothing out of the ordinary or nothing at all surprising for that tight wad choke. But there's nothing stuck down in there. There's no big rips or tears or anything. And it looks very much normal for what I would expect it to, but it's definitely not a turkey wad at the same time. Alright y'all, well, what did you think about that result right there? We would have had a dead turkey at 40 yards, but that is the absolute limitations for this combination, which isn't really surprising all things considered here. We're trying to push a very cheap, basic field style load pretty much to the limit here. It's good enough to do the job, but it's clearly not a dedicated turkey shell. Now at 30 yards and in, you would absolutely be hammering turkeys all day long with that, especially at 1300-ish feet per second velocity with a lead 4 pellet. But it did give us a pretty uniform and even spread overall, even though we don't have a very high pellet count to work with. So there is the possibility that we might be able to find another choke to condense that down just a little bit better. Maybe that's a little more constriction, a little less constriction, I don't know. But I do think it's at least worth trying a couple different chokes with these just to see what happens if we can get any better out of them. They're definitely not going to be a Winchester Longbeard XR4 type of territory, but we still might be able to get a little more out of them than that. So I guess leave all your thoughts down in the comments. Is that about what you expected to see, or were you surprised one way or the other? Have you tested any basic field or upland loads like that through a turkey choke? And if so, what kind of results have you seen? And is there a good shell and choke combo like that that you know of that you want to see us try out? And what other shell or choke combos do you want to see us try with either these Super X Upland 4s or that Primos Tight Wad 660 choke? Let me know all that down below. At the end of the day here, I think it's pretty reasonable for what it is. It definitely didn't surprise us at all. It's technically speaking good enough, but not an ideal turkey pattern, at least at 40 yards, which is to be expected all things considered. But with that being said, I've got some more testing to get done for you guys, so I'm going to get back to it. As always, we have the channel Instagram as well as the mailbox where you can send stuff if you'd like. All that information will be in the description if you're interested in it, but I'm going to get back to it, so I'll see y'all in the next one.